Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I didn't love it as much as I expected I would. It is a love story, and not necessarily a love story of an astronaut in space, but actually a story about the complex relationships in Joan's life. The relationship between her and her sister, the relationship between her and her niece, and then the friendship she develops with other astronauts, including the romantic relationship that eventually develops between her and Vanessa, one of the other astronaut trainees. I thought Taylor Jenkins Reid did a wonderful job of telling this story that takes place over a significant period of time. I think almost 5 years of time is covered in this book. I think my negative opinion of it comes more from the expectations I had going in, which weren't necessarily met. I really wanted more of the training that they did, as well as more in space. I thought what she did set up for what was taking place in this like heart pumping aspect of the story that actually takes place on the space shuttle was really well done, but there wasn't enough of it for what I was looking for. I also think that the characters that were developed were compelling. There were characters you really did not like, and then there were characters that fell flat, even though those were the ones that I really expected to love or be told more about. There is decent depth to all of the characters in this story, including Joan, who's our main character, and Vanessa, who's the love interest. I developed a deeper connection to one of the characters that wasn't really meant to be that big of a focus than I did to Vanessa. For those who are wondering if this is a spicy novel or not, as it is like a love story and marketed almost as a romance, I personally felt like this read more like a literary fiction, historical fiction, than a strict romance would. And I would say it was door cracked open in terms of spice. Like, there is some description of intimate scenes, but it's done in language that isn't explicit and more poetic in writing in a way. I thought the writing was very good and the story was written well, but I think the pacing was a little bit off. I really wanted more of the action, and then the climax of the story was page turning, and then it just ended abruptly. And I don't know how to talk about that without spoilers, so if you read Atmosphere, please come back and let's chat in my DMs about this ending. I personally think that there was more self-reflection and processing of what might be happening in her life in this story than her other books. I think the author's note at the beginning and her acknowledgments at the end point to how a lot of the relationship between Joan and Francis is probably her expressing her love for her daughter and the relationship that they have. I also think that the exploration of Joan's perception of herself and what that means in relation to those around her was maybe more self-reflective than it was intended to be. Overall, I would recommend this, not necessarily like if you loved Project Hail Mary and want that. I don't think it delivers on that scale. I think this is more of a historical fiction novel that looks at complex relationships than it is about space and space exploration and astronauts.